Hi, I'm Marin. My family used to call me a freeloader behind my back, while living off my paycheck in silence. They hid my college acceptance, mocked me on video, and then showed up asking for favors like nothing happened. But when I finally spoke up, they tried to tear me down in public. Ever been betrayed by the people who raised you, and then blamed for surviving it? The city hummed beneath my office windows, all glass and glare. Downtown Austin never really sleeps, just shifts tone when the sun goes down. I stood still, hands in the pockets of my pressed slacks, watching taillights trail through the streets like blood cells in glass veins. Up here, it looked like success. Clean lines, prestige, control. But success is quieter than you think. It doesn't fill the room with applause. It just leaves you standing there, alone, wondering why it doesn't feel like enough. They used to say, I'd never make it on my own. You'd fall flat without this family, my mother said once, cocktail in hand, as if she were offering wisdom. They'd laugh at me during dinners, after I'd excuse myself to go read or study. They called me cold, distant, ungrateful. I called it survival. 16 years ago, Odessa, Texas. I had come home with a 4.0 GPA, every subject lined up in straight A's like soldiers. I'd printed it out myself, carefully folded it into thirds, slipped it into my dad's worn hand. His hands always smelled like gasoline and sweat. The man had more hours under a hood than I'd spent breathing. He barely glanced at it. Then he lit a cigarette, grabbed the paper, and held it to the stove. The corners curled, my name blackened. You think paper makes you special? He said. You want to be somebody? Get a job. Nobody cares about grades out here. I didn't cry. Not then. But something in me turned in on itself like a fist. Back in the present, I opened the drawer where I kept Ruth Ann's things. There was an old book she'd passed on to me, dog-eared, full of margin notes. Something slipped out when I tilted it forward. An envelope, still sealed, yellowed at the corners. My breath caught. Slowly, I opened it, the way you open something sacred. It was an acceptance letter from Columbia University. Full ride, signed and dated from 13 years ago. My hands trembled. I wasn't shocked. Not really. Somewhere deep down, I had always known. I just didn't expect to see the proof in black and white, addressed to me, but intercepted by her. Darla, my mother. She'd buried this like it was trash. I sat down, the letter still in my lap, and stared at the wall like it might offer some kind of answer. All those years, all the names they called me, leech, burden, ungrateful brat, and they were the ones who clipped my wings. The anger didn't come all at once. It was slower, colder. It wasn't fire. It was ice spreading beneath my ribs. A refusal to feel sorry anymore. A quiet vow. I won't let this go unanswered. I won't pretend. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and whispered aloud into the empty office. They called me a freeloader, and they're gonna find out who built the roof over their heads. The buzzer on my desk lit up. I pressed it. There's someone here to see you. My assistant's voice crackled through. She says she's your sister. My pulse didn't spike. My face didn't change. Tell her to wait. I wasn't expecting the venom to come from the internet. It started with a post in a local Facebook group, one of those Odessa proud kinds where high school sports scores got more attention than local elections. I wasn't tagged, but my name was there, bolded in the comments like a red flag. Someone had written, "Funny how the self-made CEO used her aunt's money to climb the ladder. Must be nice freeloading off an old lady." I stared at the screen. The words didn't sting at first, they itched. Subtle, like a mosquito bite you try to ignore until it swells. I clicked the profile. Private, no mutual friends, just one comment after another under threads about local businesses, hinting at nepotism, manipulation, greed. I scrolled further and saw someone reply, "Everyone always knew Marin just used Ruth to escape. Guess it paid off." The confusion that hit me was slow, not sharp. A rising tide, not a slap. Was this just gossip? Or something else? I needed to know how deep it ran. So I called Alyssa Hartman, someone I hadn't spoken to since junior year. She was always neutral back then, a safe voice. "Hey," I said. Random question. "Have people in Odessa been talking about me? In a certain way?" There was a pause. Then a sigh. Marin, yeah, for years now. People say you disappeared, used Ruth's money, never looked back. They think you ghosted your family. I didn't respond. She added, it's small town talk, you know? No one forgets, even when they don't know anything. I thanked her and hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows on my walls moving like restless ghosts. I wasn't angry yet. I was unraveling. Someone had fed this narrative, nurtured it like mold under floorboards. I opened my laptop, wrote down a few usernames I'd seen repeating the same language. Then I called Miles, the lead developer at Gilded Fork's tech division. Can you do something off book? I asked. He laughed. You want me to track a troll? I want to know who's pretending they don't know me. 24 hours later, I had the answer. Miles called late, voice a little more serious than usual. The main IP behind those comments and that Texas Truth Mama 92 account, it traces to an email, darla.townhouse92@outlook.com, registered with an address in Odessa, your mom's. I said nothing. You okay? He asked. I ended the call. The silence in my apartment stretched like smoke. It slithered into the corners and waited there. I stood in the middle of the room, the air around me suddenly dense. I'd expected disappointment, yes, but this was different. This was surgical, deliberate. She'd built this lie in pieces like a puzzle only she could complete. And for what? To be right? To control the version of me that made it out? A memory broke through like a splinter in my chest. I was 17, walking down the hall late at night. I heard her on the phone, voice light and sharp. She wouldn't have made it without Ruth. Honestly, that girl clings to anyone with a wallet. I thought it was sarcasm, or bitterness, maybe even fear. Now I knew better. I grabbed my phone, threw it across the room. It hit the wall, cracked the screen, slid to the floor, and I sat down. Not to cry. I did cry, but only for a moment, like a reflex. It ended as fast as it came. The tears dried up before they left a mark. I wasn't going to ask why. I already knew. I just hadn't accepted it until now. My mother didn't want me to fail. She wanted to control how I succeeded. And the moment she couldn't, she rewrote the story without me in it. Fine. Then she's no longer part of mine. My phone buzzed. It was a message. Her name still lit up on the cracked screen like nothing had happened. Your sister needs a job. She'll be stopping by. I stared at the words. Not a question. A declaration. I muttered out loud to no one but myself and the flickering city lights outside. Of course she will. She showed up like she owned the place. Monday morning. The air was sharp with the scent of espresso and ambition, just like it always was at Gilded Fork HQ. I had barely set my bag down when the receptionist pinged my office. There's a woman downstairs. Says she's your sister. Has a baby with her. My blood didn't run cold. It froze solid. I looked up from my desk, not at the screen, but through it. Sable. Let HR handle it, I said flatly. A part of me thought maybe she'd come to apologize. But Sable didn't do apologies. She did pivots. And this time, apparently, with a baby on her hip. I didn't go down to see her. I didn't have to. By noon, HR had already sent me a file marked urgent. Attached was a forwarded email, Sable's email, with her proposed edits to our new rebranding campaign. The file name was Brand Vision 2024, revised by Sable Linnell. The kicker? She'd CC'd Caleb Lang. My jaw locked. Caleb, the regional director, wasn't just a name on the list. He was the name. Someone who had enough clout to move things if he wanted. And it seemed like he wanted. I scrolled through her document. It was familiar. Too familiar. She'd taken my team's proposal, stripped the nuance, slapped her name on it, and pitched it like she'd been working in strategy for years. No credits, no context. Just pure, polished theft. Not survival. A takeover. I didn't slam the laptop. I didn't yell. I flagged the file, forwarded it to my private drive, and locked my screen. I knew better than to react in front of people who might be watching. Later that afternoon, Rachel, my assistant, came into my office with that look. You're going to want to hear this, she said, voice low. She closed the door behind her. I was walking past the hallway. Sable was talking to Caleb. She said she might be pregnant. Said she's worried the company's stress isn't good for the baby. My stomach didn't drop. It flipped, violently. She's not pregnant. I know, Rachel replied. She said it loud enough to make sure I'd hear. That wasn't a confession. That was a weapon. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the ceiling. A year ago, I would have second-guessed myself. Wondered if maybe Sable was just desperate. Now, I recognized a pattern when I saw one. She used to fake sprained ankles to get out of plays I'd been cast in. Once, she forged a doctor's note just so she could take my spot in a choir competition. She knew how to cry on cue and smile through sabotage. Back then, Mom would say, "She's just trying her best." No one ever said that about me. This wasn't new. It was just scaled up. Same tricks, different battlefield. I opened a new file on my computer titled Sable Conflict Timeline. I documented everything. Dates, names, attachments, screenshots. This wasn't a family problem anymore. It was a company risk. And I was done playing the role of the understanding sister. By 5 o'clock, I sent a formal note to HR flagging a potential conflict of interest between Sable and Caleb Lang. Neutral tone, no emotion, just facts. As I left the office, I walked past the glass meeting room. They were inside, Sable and Caleb, laughing, too loud, too close. Sable tossed her hair the same way she did at every high school pageant. His hand brushed her wrist as he handed her a pen. They didn't notice me. I didn't flinch. In my head, a single sentence looped like a low hum beneath my skin. If she thinks this is going to end like last time, she's not ready for who I've become. The call came just after midnight. I was half asleep, mind fogged from exhaustion and the flickering guilt of having ignored my mother's last message. When the screen lit up with Ruth's name, something sharp sliced through the haze. "They're outside," she said, voice trembling but hushed. "Your parents. They're banging on my door. Carl's yelling. Darla's with him." I sat up fast. "What?" "I think they've been drinking. He's demanding I take the video down. Said if I don't, they'll bury me in court." My skin prickled with a fury I hadn't felt in years. Primal, protective. Ruth was the only person who had ever stood between me and their chaos. And now they were at her door, clawing like animals. "I'm coming over." "No, stay where you are. I'm locking everything, but I wanted you to know." The line went dead. By morning, I had a PDF in my inbox from a law firm in Midland, a formal cease and desist letter citing defamation, reputational harm, and emotional distress. The subject? The video of my parents drunk at a family gathering, caught on camera mocking me while mooching off my income. I read the letter 3 times. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't change. But my chest, it burned. Not fear. Something else. I called Ruth. She answered on the second ring. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm fine," she said too quickly, then added, "I've seen worse. Carl's bark is bigger than his brains." But I heard it. The crack behind her usual calm. That soft tremble only I would catch. I ended the call and stared out the window. The city still swallowed in that gray-blue quiet before sunrise. 16 years ago. I was 16. Hiding behind the garage, knees scraped, clutching a flashlight and a tattered copy of Jane Eyre. My parents were inside yelling, something about me being off, about how books won't fix what's wrong with her. I remember Ruth kneeling beside me, flashlight between us. "There's power in silence," she whispered, "until it's time to speak." Now was that time. I opened the camera app on my phone, hit record. My name is Marin Rusk, and I've spent my entire life being told to be quiet, to protect the family name, to keep peace, to stay in my place. But silence doesn't equal truth, and what you're about to hear is mine. I didn't post it, not yet. I sent it to my legal team with a simple note. If they want to play games, I'm ready for the court. Then I walked out the door. It was still early. The building lobby was nearly empty. The doorman stopped me at the entrance. "Miss Rusk, someone left this for you." He handed me a plain manila envelope, no return address. I opened it without thinking. Inside was a single photo, a zoomed-in shot of me, speaking to a reporter outside my office 2 days ago. Candid, slightly blurry. On the back, scribbled in red ink, "Careful who you trust." The ink bled a little into the paper. I looked up. The lobby suddenly felt colder, the walls closer. Someone had been watching, And it wasn't just my family anymore. The voicemail landed before the sun did. I was in the kitchen, half asleep, spooning coffee into the filter when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't check. It was a Sunday, and lately, even silence felt like self-care. But then I saw her name flash across the screen. Darla. I hit play. Her voice was faintly wet with tears. Performed. Your father collapsed. He's in the hospital. We need help with the bills. I stared at the wall, hand frozen midair. My stomach did that strange turn. Not fear, not concern. Something heavier. Something older. He collapsed? I didn't dial her back. I called the hospital directly. St. Vincent's. The woman on the line was polite. Carl Rusk? Yes, he was admitted overnight. Dehydration and minor heart arrhythmia. He's stable now. I waited. She continued. Insurance covered everything. Medicare and his supplemental policy handled the bill. That's confirmed? Yes, ma'am. No balance due. I ended the call, and I sat down. Not like someone who just got bad news, but like someone who realized they'd been hit without even knowing it. So it wasn't a tragedy. It was bait. Again. By noon, another hit came. A text message. An image of my mother in a hospital bed. IV in arm. Hair messy, face pale. The caption below. We're all breaking down. Are you happy now? I stared at the photo for a full minute before swiping up and checking the metadata. A 2-year-old file taken at a completely different hospital. The silence inside me shifted. Not sadness, not rage, just clarity. I remembered wiring them money when I was 22, living off canned soup in a studio apartment, thinking I was saving them from foreclosure. No thank you. No call. Not even a lie about needing less. They didn't need saving. They just liked watching me bleed for them. I walked over to the bookshelf and picked up the photo I kept of Ruth. Her sitting on the porch with a mug in hand, cat on her lap, eyes squinting against the sun. She never asked. She just gave. She had nothing and still gave everything. And the ones who had me? They took until there was nothing left to take, and then pretended I was the problem. That's when the shift happened. That's when I drew the line. I opened my laptop and drafted an email. Short, final. Darla, this is the last time you'll use guilt as currency. My answer is no. Don't ask again. Marin, I hit send. I didn't reread it. 2 minutes later, I received an auto reply. Subject, out of office extended leave message. I'm unavailable at the moment. Please direct all future family matters to Carl Rusk. Extended leave. Right. I sat back in my chair. The war wasn't over. They weren't done. But neither was I. The call came as the office lights dimmed to match the sky. I was alone, again, closing out emails and rechecking financial reports for the board meeting. The quiet buzz of the phone felt wrong before I even answered. It was the hospital. Miss Rusk, I'm sorry to inform you, Ruth Ann Lindley passed away late this afternoon. My mind couldn't catch up. Passed away? How? She was fine. She was always fine. Solid as stone. Her voice still echoed in my voicemail from 3 days ago, laughing, scolding me for skipping dinner. She had a cardiac event. It was fast, peaceful. Everything after that dissolved into white noise. The sounds around me blurred into static. My chest wasn't breaking. It was hollowing. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just sat there and disappeared inside myself. Her memorial was small. Of course it was. Ruth never wanted spectacle. No flowers. No speeches. Just music and honesty. After the service, her lawyer found me near the patio, silent, hands in pockets, staring at nothing. She left this for you. He handed me an envelope. Inside, her will. I was the sole beneficiary. Everything. Her house, her savings, her rights was mine. Tucked into the fold was a handwritten note. This isn't charity. This is legacy. Make something bigger than survival. You already are. The tears came, slow and uncontrollable, but it wasn't just grief. It was clarity, painful and sharp. She had spent her life giving what no one else would. Belief, space, a second chance. And now it was mine to carry forward. But it wasn't until the lawyer paused and added, she also asked that I tell you something about her daughter, Nina. That the ground shifted beneath me. I had never heard the name spoken aloud in that way. I'd only known it as a whisper, a shadow in Ruth's voice. He explained, Ruth had a daughter before she ever took me in. A girl who got pregnant at 16. Her family forced her into a marriage to cover the shame. Ruth tried to help her leave. They disowned her for it. And when Nina couldn't find a way out, she found an ending. She saw herself in you, the lawyer said, and maybe a second chance to save what she couldn't back then. I sat on Ruth's old porch that night, alone, the air carrying the scent of the garden she loved. I didn't know if I was supposed to feel honored or crushed, but I knew this. She gave me what my own blood never had. Love without leverage, support without strings. I went inside and opened my laptop. I made a list. Names, dates, documents. Every moment of sabotage from stolen project drafts to backdoor deals. I wasn't building revenge. I was building proof. Then I called my estate planner, ordered a full restructure. Ruth's assets wouldn't just sit. They would move, work, fight. A foundation. For women like me. For women like Nina. For the daughters left behind. I wrote in my journal that night. I loved them, and they used that against me. But Ruth taught me better. And now, I fight differently. The next morning, I stood in front of Ruth's house. Mine now. It still smelled like peppermint tea and dry earth. Still felt like her. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Let's start the paperwork. I'm founding the Ruth Ann Initiative. As I walked up the porch steps, something rustled in the bushes. I stopped. And then, a voice I hadn't heard in weeks, smooth, smug, and sharp like broken glass. So, you're the queen now? Sable stepped out of the shadows, arms folded, eyes calculating. I didn't flinch. The lights strung above the rooftop glowed warm and low, trying their best to make the night feel intimate. I knew better. Nothing about this event was meant to comfort. The drinks were too crisp, the laughter too scripted, and Sable, she was too nice. She floated through the crowd like she owned the air. Just celebrating you, sis, she had said earlier, her lips barely curving into a smile. That tone, light, practiced, loaded, set off every internal alarm. This was no tribute. A lifestyle journalist showed up mid-cocktail hour. No press was invited. I didn't recognize her face, but I knew the type. Wide-eyed, deceptively casual, voice just sharp enough to cut. She didn't introduce herself to me. She smiled at Sable. Something was about to happen. I just didn't know how loud it would be. They handed me a mic near the end of the evening. I kept my speech short, mechanical, eyes flicking between donors and board members, doing my part. Then, the reporter raised her hand. Miss Rusk, she said sweetly, some say your rise was funded by family money. That true? The mic in my hand might as well have turned to stone. The crowd shifted like wind through leaves, soft but telling. I opened my mouth, then froze as screens across the rooftop lit up. Phones, all at once. Someone had triggered a link. QR codes planted on the cocktail napkins now linked to a blog post. A leak. Freeloader turned fraud. The hidden truth about Marin Rusk. My name was there in bold, twisted into accusations. Manipulative headlines. Photos of me smiling beside Ruth. Captions claiming I coerced a dying woman into rewriting her will. I looked across the space and found her. Sable didn't flinch. She just raised her champagne glass and sipped. The silence didn't explode. It cracked, like ice underfoot. And I knew this had been planned, scripted. A perfect little stage, and I was cast as the fraud. After the speech, I stepped away from the crowd, ignored the questions, walked straight into the elevator. By the time I got to my office, my phone was already buzzing. 5 emails from press, 2 requests for comment, 1 internal alert. Our servers were being hit with data pulls for archived press releases. Someone had sent a blast email to over 40 media contacts. Attached were old photos, Ruth with a cane, me holding her arm, cropped to make her look frail, me manipulative, quotes ripped from context, fabricated statements from anonymous insiders. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened our content calendar and deleted every scheduled post, locked the company's PR access, and in the cold glass silence of my office, I whispered, "She wants a war in front of witnesses. Fine." I went to find Caleb. He was gone. Not just from the building, from the entire guest list. His name scratched off the RSVP. I remembered what he once told me months ago when Sable first came back. "You're strong, Marin, but Sable, she's magnetic. People orbit her." And just like that, I understood. He'd seen this coming. and he'd stayed out of it. Betrayal doesn't always come with daggers. Sometimes it's just absence. That night at 2 a.m., I opened a blank document. No more defending myself, no more subtlety, just truth. I titled it, The Truth About Bloodlines. And for the first time in weeks, my hand didn't shake. She struck first. Now I finish it. The boardroom was cold. Not in temperature, but in tension. The air held the weight of what was about to be said. I sat at the head of the long table, 10 pairs of eyes fixed on me, waiting for the story I wasn't going to tell with emotion, but with evidence. I passed around printed packets, neatly labeled tabs, time-stamped emails, screenshots, voice recordings. My voice didn't crack. It didn't rise. It didn't even try to convince. I just said, "This is what she's been doing." Silence followed. No gasps, no immediate outrage, just quiet turning pages, brows furrowing, shoulders tensing. I stood, walked to the screen behind me, and tapped to play a recording. A conversation between Sable and Alex Renner, one of our primary investors. "She's not media-friendly. People like warmth. I bring that," Sable's voice cooed through the speaker. The room didn't move. "She's efficient, sure, but who trusts efficiency over empathy? And then, I can make people forget about her, if you're ready to pivot." I let it run a few more seconds, then shut it off. She's been scheduling private meetings with him for months, off calendar, unapproved. I passed a printed calendar log with cross-reference dates, and he wired her $25,000 3 days after their dinner. I dropped the final page on the table. A photo of Sable leaving Alex's condo, late at night, hair tied up, coat folded over her arm like she didn't expect to see anyone. No one said a word. Then, "This changes everything," murmured one of the senior board members. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I didn't win. I neutralized a threat. The meeting adjourned without debate. They said they'd discuss actions internally, but I already knew what came next. Sable was done. As I walked out, my phone buzzed. I checked it. A link. I tapped. And there it was. The video, Ruth's video, the one she'd filmed quietly, never meant to see the light of day. Carl slurring through his third beer. Darla sneering, "She barely gives us anything." Freeloader with a fancy title. But this time, it had been edited. Captions, cut-ins, commentary, framed with music and call-outs, and it had been reposted by someone with a verified account. It was going viral. I scrolled through the comments, thousands of them. She built herself from that? CEO of the year? No one talks about emotional abuse. Resilience. This is what it looks like. I stood in the lobby of my own company, clutching a phone that had been a weapon, a lifeline, and now a mirror. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. Later that night, I pulled out my mother's contact, stared at it, hovered, then I deleted it. No second thoughts, no grief. I opened a new message, to myself, drafted a resignation. Not from the company, from the role I was born into, daughter. If they wanted legacy, they could keep the lie. I'd build something else. The garden was quiet. Dew clung to the petals of the roses like breath held too long. I clipped them gently, the way Ruth Ann had taught me. Sharp snip, soft hands. Always tend the roots, she used to say. Even after the bloom fades, the root remembers. I stood there longer than I meant to, the morning sunlight stretching across the yard like a reminder that peace comes slowly, and even slower when it's earned. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was honest. Still, beneath the quiet, a dull ache lingered. I had made it through the storm. But that didn't mean the wind hadn't left bruises. The papers called it resilience. A week after the board meeting, the headlines shifted. CEO withstands public smear, emerges stronger. Marin Rusk, silent no more. They painted me as a phoenix, but I didn't rise from ashes. I walked out before the fire could finish me. Internally, Gilded Fork solidified. My role expanded. The board asked me to oversee 3 new locations, and I accepted with a nod. No celebration, just forward motion. Caleb transferred out without a goodbye. Sable vanished into the periphery. No more public statements. No more curated smiles. I noticed the silence from Carl and Darla, too. No texts, no voicemails, not even a fake apology. I hadn't expected redemption, just a ripple. Instead, I got still water. And sometimes that's more telling than a scream. One afternoon, a delivery arrived without a return label. Brown box, no sender. Inside, family photos, old, worn. One caught my eye immediately. Me, as a child, sitting between Ruth and a girl I'd only seen in a single photo before. Nina. On the back, Ruth's handwriting, my girl's. My throat tightened. I remembered a day years ago, Ruth in her rocking chair, me on the steps, my head heavy with questions I was too scared to ask. "You are enough," she told me, brushing my hair back. Even when no one says it, especially then. I cried quietly, holding that photo, letting it hurt in the right places, the kind that doesn't break you, the kind that frees something stuck. Weeks later, I stood on a stage in a sunlit conference room, looking out at a sea of unfamiliar but open faces. The launch of the Ruth Ann Initiative. I told them about silence, about what it costs, about what it takes to speak without shouting, to rise without stepping on someone else's neck. I told them I didn't build a legacy from revenge. I built it from what I survived. I didn't win by hurting them back, I said into the mic. I won by choosing not to become them. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It didn't need to be. It was enough. That night, I lit a single candle in Ruth's kitchen. Her home. My home. The flame danced briefly, then steadied. I watched it burn down, let it flicker until it folded in on itself, and then gently blew it out. A buzz from my phone lit the room. One new email. Subject, legal inquiry, family trust misallocation, urgent review required. I stared at the screen. So, it wasn't over. But this time I wasn't afraid of what came next. Sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that love doesn't always come from the people who should have given it first. I spent years trying to earn something that was never mine to chase. Approval, acknowledgement, a seat at a table I never set. And in the end, I learned this. Peace doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from accepting yourself, fully, unapologetically. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, like the one who was too quiet, too ambitious, too different, then maybe this story found you for a reason. Maybe you needed the reminder that you don't owe your legacy to your last name. You owe it to your choices. What we build for ourselves, what we protect, and who we choose to become, that's what defines us. Not their opinions, not their silence, and certainly not their guilt. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved in order to love yourself better? Have you ever been told you couldn't do something and proved them wrong? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story touched your heart, or let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too. And if you didn't like this video, tell me why. Was it the story? The message? I'm listening. And hey, if you're still here, and this resonated even just a little, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We've got more stories coming. Real ones, raw ones, and maybe ones that feel a little like yours. See you in the next one.